It's very possible that the player who I'm going to be talking about in this video is the most controversial prospect in this draft class. Zay Flowers is someone who, on one hand, is just listed at 5'9", 180 pounds, although is quick, 4.42, not blazing speed, but fast. I mean, certainly fast. There are some people that don't love Zay Flowers. Some people that don't have him as a first-round talent. There's some people that have made Antonio Brown comparisons, that person being Chris Sims, who had Zay Flowers as his #1 receiver, and he's not alone. There's other people who have Flowers as their #1 receiver. So what is he? Is he this incredible diamond in the rough that's going to be an elite wide receiver, or is he someone who's a solid slot receiver? Well, let's get into it. First, let's look at his PFF chart. It's good. I mean, the overall grades, nothing too fantastic here, a 75.5, but at the same time, it's worth mentioning that this is not something that translates particularly well to the NFL level. PFF grades for receivers. Now, for other positions, it works better. Receivers, not so much. The other stuff, though, yards per route ran, a solid 2.22 for, that's very good for college, solid for an NFL prospect. Contested catch rate, he did do a good job of making contested catches, but his drop rate, not ideal. 10.3, definitely on the low side of things. You see that dot on each of the bars. The further to the right, the better for each of these, positions. So he was kind of, basically 2/3 of college players were better at not dropping the football than him. But when it came to contested catch rate, he actually did pretty good. Definitely makes you wonder, and part of this is the tape backing this up, is it seems like more concentration and more him turning too early as opposed to not being physically able to catch the football, which is probably a good thing. But speaking of tape, let's get into tape. Heading over here is a good example of kind of what he does, just what he does. What he does well, what he does poorly, I'll let you be the judge. But this is who he is as a player. He is a route runner through and through. You see his footwork. He likes to move around. That's what he does. He doesn't just run his route. And it's very exciting. So what you see here, zone coverage, you see where he's trying to get to in a gap in coverage. Watch how when this play begins. Watch how he runs this route, though. So far, relatively normal. I mean, basically just getting to his spot. But here's where things get interesting. How do most guys run this route? You just turn around, right? I mean, you're at your spot. Flowers going to do a little extra. Watch him fake to his left and then kind of do a full 360 essentially to then try and get open. Eventually does get open and makes the grab after the initial throw wasn't made, even though there was a window. Should have been made earlier, but still good, off-script stuff by the quarterback and way to not give up on the play by Flowers. But that's just kind of, the route running is the main thing I wanted to show there. That's what he does. He likes to use extra moves and definitely can work out. Like something like this, for example, where he's not going to get the ball on this one, but it's just a good example of what he does, where it's a one-on-one matchup, essentially. It's, a cover 2, but there's the corner in that area. Watch how Flowers is going to run this route. Watch how he kind of, look at how he moves like that. Really sells the cut in and then gets to the outside. Throw does not go in his direction, but that's fine. That's football. That happens. Still, this is his, this is what he does, and I totally understand why he is such a controversial player, because it's so controversial if you should let players do this stuff. Of what do you want out of a receiver? Do you want someone like Chris Olave, who just runs to his spot and gets open as quick as possible, makes it so that his quarterback can make a quick throw? Or do you want someone like Hunter Renfrow, who will make 75 different moves, but pretty much always gets open after he makes those moves, but sometimes it just doesn't get open quick enough? Flowers is, I see a lot of Hunter Renfrow comparisons with him. That's probably my NFL comp I would give to Flowers, is a Hunter Renfrow type, which when Hunter Renfrow is working, it looks awesome. And I would like to say with Flowers, I don't think he's purely just someone who has to use 75 different moves to get open. He can get open in other ways, and this is an example of a more traditional play. It's just him trying to get open over the middle, right? Very simple. People in the NFL do this all the time. This is something you want to see a receiver be able to do if you're drafting them in the first round. Look at how you're going to see the quarterback take the snap, runs the play action, and right here is where Flowers is. But I think Flowers is going to do a good job of kind of noticing that if he just runs straight over the middle right now, he's not really getting open. He needs to give a little bit more space, and he needs to get a little bit further deep to allow himself himself to get as open as possible. And so as you see, that's going to be exactly what he does. He does get further deep and gives himself a bubble to be able to, gives his quarterback a bubble to make that throw. He is able to make the catch and pick up a good chunk play. He has a very good feel for this stuff, and there is some definite talent in that, in having the feel to pull that kind of thing off. Now, some people might say, well, you expect NFL receivers to be able to do that stuff. I actually don't. I don't think NFL receivers do this stuff that consistently. So seeing someone at the college level who can kind of get a feel for the game and figure out where those windows are, it's very good. Now, windows won't be as big in the NFL. That's certainly true. And just because he can do it in college doesn't mean he can do it at the NFL level, but it's certainly a good sign. So where does he land, and what is his upside? Where is he as a player? Is he Antonio Brown, who, worth mentioning, Antonio Brown was certainly not a very hyped up player at all. He was a day 3 pick. So is he an Antonio Brown type? Well, that would be insane. Calling anyone Antonio Brown, especially at the wide receiver position where it's so difficult to evaluate, calling someone an Antonio Brown level player would just be unfair to Flowers, and no way he can live up to that hype. But is he someone who can be a true number 1 option? And the answer is probably, but probably not in the way that most people assume a true number 1 option is. I mean, the one thing that I do have to say that would concern me about Flowers is a lot of these guys that are, I think of the best example of a Flowers type right now is a Devontae Adams, who can kind of, first step, get by someone and then run. Quarterback can make a throw right away and he can make the catch right away. That's kind of the guy that who's a great route runner, who can get open quickly type of guy. I don't know if Flowers can be able to do that on the outside that consistently. I just haven't seen that from him. Maybe he can develop. Again, Adams wasn't the first round pick either, so maybe it'll take some time to develop, and maybe it's possible, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to happen. However, the fact that it's a chance that it can happen is certainly exciting. Again, if you want to get an elite wide receiver, there's definitely the upside with Flowers, but just in a very unique way. I do think about someone like Hunter Renfrow, who is still a very effective player at this level, but would he be a first round pick? I don't know. And is that maybe where Flowers more is, of someone who can get open, but it just takes him time to get open because of all the moves he has to make? Or is there maybe a happy medium somewhere that he just hasn't figured out yet? Is it possible that he can, get open consistently in different ways? Maybe he doesn't have to make these 3 different moves. He can just make 1 or 2 moves and still get open that way. It's possible, because we really haven't seen that part of Flowers' game that much. So that's maybe where things get a little bit exciting, and why maybe you could feel hopeful that Flowers could have some success at the next level. So as a whole, there's definite upside with Flowers. There is, and I can see why people are really high on him. I don't have him as my number 1 wide receiver, but I still do have him as a good wide receiver. I think that there's definitely a ton to like about Flowers, and I can see why people would be very high on him. I think that, one thing I also mentioned is I think his highlights would look a lot better if the quarterback would just give him the ball. It feels like a lot of times he gets open and just doesn't get the ball thrown his way, which is unfortunate. But I think the size is going to concern some people, listed at 5'9", 180 pounds, like I said. But I think he plays bigger than his size. Like, I think I was kind of surprised to see he was that small, because he plays bigger, and I wouldn't be overly concerned about that. I think he'll probably be a good player. I think the question is just how good can he be, and then where do you draft a player like that, because he is such a wild card. I totally get why some people don't have him as a top 5 receiver. I totally get why some people have him as wide receiver 1. I am, unfortunately, the boring answer, which is somewhere in between. So, yeah, that's kind of how I view all of that stuff. But, yeah, what are your thoughts on Zay Flowers? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And, of course, as always, thanks for watching.